this was me. I got SIBO after competing, and then I ended up looking like this for the past 4 years. And that is why I'm here on this call with you, because I've basically taken everything that I've learned and compiled it into a slideshow. I am not a doctor. I'm not a practitioner. I am just a girl who has suffered for the past 4 years. And I refuse to hold my story in because I did not go through this for nothing. I'm at least going to share it with y'all and hopefully help y'all in your own journeys. So I want to start with a visual. Can someone just say, I can't see any of y'all's faces or anything in the chat box because I'm doing a presentation. Can one of y'all just say that you can yes, you can see the presentation?
We can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm like, I might be just talking to myself at this point. Okay, so I'm just giving you a little visual of the digestive system because most people don't even know what it looks like, and I want to break this down for you. So digestion starts in the mouth. I always talk to y'all about chewing, eating relaxed. Our saliva produces enzymes that start to break down our carbohydrates. And then after that, it goes into the stomach. Food sits in the stomach anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, but we have our stomach acid in our stomach that basically activates pepsin, and that's going to break down our protein. So most protein breakdown happens in the stomach. Carbohydrate breakdown happens in the mouth and then also in the stomach. But again, majority, that's why when people, I've talked about this on my Instagram, but they say, oh, I can't break down chicken anymore when they're deep in prep. It's not because they have an intolerance to chicken, but their stomach acid is low and now they can't break down majority of their protein. Now, acid is super important because it's also going to be our first line of defense. So any pathogens, bacteria, fungus that try to get into the body, it's going to protect it. So very, very important that we have that. And then also it's going to help ionize minerals so they can actually be absorbed in the small intestine. It's also going to promote motility, so movement through the digestive system. If you have low stomach acid, you probably have very stagnant digestion. You probably feel like food just like sits in your stomach for a long time. And then once that food, and it's called chyme when we have food and our stomach acid gets into the small intestine, it's going to travel through the small intestine for anywhere from 4 to 6 hours, or at least it should. And then our pancreas is going to produce enzymes to then go into our small intestine, as well as bile from our gallbladder. And that's what's going to continue that breakdown and that absorption. So the bile is gonna help emulsify our fat. So I've talked about this as well, but certain vitamins must be taken with fats because they're fat soluble. So like our A, D, E, and K, very, very important. If you're taking those vitamins, to take them with a fat source. But bile is very, very important for fat breakdown. It's stored in our gallbladder. Now, if you've had your gallbladder removed, you need to be on ox bile. You essentially just need to replace your bile for the rest of your life. I know it sucks, it's not ideal, but we have to have bile to break down our fats. You might have floating stool. If you've ever noticed that, then you're probably not breaking down your fats very well. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then it's also going to bind to toxins. So bile is very important for a lot of different things, but mainly fat absorption and then binding to toxins. And then in our small intestine, that's where majority of our nutrients are going to be absorbed. So if you have an inflamed small intestine or intestinal lining, you're probably not absorbing all of your nutrients. And then obviously motility, which is movement through the small intestine. And then our large intestine, that's mostly going to absorb water, electrolytes, and then that's where most of our gut microbiome is. So when we talk about the microbiome, we talk about gut bacteria. It's mostly going to be housed in our large intestine. It should not be in our small intestine. I know it looks like it should because our small intestine is so much longer, but it really should mostly be in our large. There's a little bit in the small, but SIBO, which is what I have been dealing with, is an overgrowth of that bacteria in the small intestine, which we'll get into in a little bit. All right. And I apologize if I'm talking too fast. So possible diagnosis that y'all could experience, IBS. Can I just get a yes in the chat if you've ever gone to your GI doctor and left with them telling you had IBS? Anybody? Yes, 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 yes. I get this a lot. IBS is essentially you go to your doctor, you do all these labs, you do the colonoscopy, you do the endoscopy, you probably did, I don't know, they did gallbladder testing on me. Everything comes back normal, and they're just like, I don't know what's wrong with you. You have IBS, you have tummy problems. And you're like, cool, that doesn't help me at all. So some of the symptoms you might be experiencing: abdominal pain, diarrhea, constipation, bloating, heartburn, excess gas. Y'all can read the rest, but there's a list of symptoms, and oftentimes they'll give you a PPI. I know when I went for my first visit, the guy told me to chew my food slower. I showed him the photo that I showed y'all, and he said, well, don't eat after 6 and chew your food better. I was like, cool. I left the office crying. I'm sure y'all have had that same experience and did nothing for me. Spent thousands of dollars on testing that told me nothing. So that's IBS, really just an umbrella term for we don't know what's wrong, you just have tummy issues. Now, IBD, this is inflammatory bowel disease. So this is more of like chronic inflammation in the colon. You may have heard of Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. These are autoimmune type conditions where the immune system is actually attacking the gut lining. And if you're dealing with this, you might have chronic diarrhea, bleeding. Usually there's a lot of blood in the stool, and you're going to have a lot of fatigue, a lot of weakness. Like you will 100% know that something very serious is going on because of these specific symptoms. And this is never going to fully go away like autoimmunes, but you can definitely get it into remission just with an anti-inflammatory lifestyle and diet. And there are supplementation that you can use to help with this as well. Now, triggers to this, definitely genetic predispositions. Usually it runs in the family. Sometimes people are born with it. Same thing with most autoimmunes. They can stay dormant until stress builds up enough and they become expressed, and you start to have a flare up. So immune dysregulation, gut microbiome imbalance, dietary triggers. So processed food is going to be inflammation, and then stress, and obviously environmental toxins. So any type of stress on the body can cause these flare ups, and you might not even get that flare up until later on in life. It's different with everybody. Okay, another one, H. pylori. I'm sure y'all have heard me talk about this as well. So H. pylori is a bacteria that's specifically in the stomach. Actually, a lot of people carry it. I think the percentage is like 85% of people have this, but not everyone is symptomatic. When we see it on GI maps, if it's present, but it's below the reference range, then we usually don't treat it. Some practitioners are like, no, we're going to treat it no matter what. For me, like if you're not having any symptoms and it's there in very low amounts, then I'm not going to worry about it, but you definitely could completely eradicate it. Now, what it's going to do is reduce stomach acid, and we'll get into stomach acid later, but obviously we don't want anything that is going to neutralize or reduce stomach acid. So sometimes it does have to be removed, and it can also damage the intestinal or the stomach lining. So if it gets really bad, it can cause stomach ulcers and sometimes stomach cancer, which is why you have to be careful and make sure you treat it if it is there in high amounts. And it can definitely trigger chronic inflammation. Some symptoms you can feel: heartburn, frequent burping, nausea, bloating, poor appetite. Um, these symptoms can also be from other things, but if you are experiencing them, you definitely want to question H. pylori. Now, how do we get rid of it? Antibiotics or herbals. We usually use mastic gum to get rid of it. That usually does the trick. Or matulity is another good one. Now, I wanted to throw this up there. I did ask my girl Abby for permission, but she was dealing with actually no GI issues. She had a little bit of heartburn and burping every now and then, but nothing major. We did blood labs. Um, she was trying to get her cycle back with me for, man, it was almost maybe a year. And her doctor was like, you have PCOS. And I was like, you don't have PCOS. Like, trust me, there's something else going on. So I said, look, let's just run a GI map. I know you don't have symptoms, but we don't know what could be hiding. Ran a GI map. H. pylori was high. Started a protocol. Literally, I think this photo was maybe 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks into her protocol. She dropped 5 pounds immediately. She has a cycle now, and you can see the difference in her inflammation levels. So sometimes we can't even tell that that stressor is there, and I'll get into stress later. But it's super important to look into the gut because that's where most inflammation is going to start. All right, SIBO. So this is what I dealt with. This is what a lot of my girly pops deal with. This is when the bacteria that's supposed to be in your large intestine overgrows into your small intestine. So you can have hydrogen dominant, which is most likely going to be diarrhea. You can have methane, which is what I had. That's constipation. Or you can have hydrogen sulfide, which is like a combo. You might have diarrhea or constipation. Now, the main symptoms with this, if you'll look at my stomach right here, you'll notice, can y'all see my mouse on the screen? Can someone tell me yes or no? Like put it in the chat.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, thank you. Um, You'll notice right here in my upper abdomen, notice how bloated that is. So it's not just like a lower abdominal bloat if I was cramping or on my period, it goes all the way up. So that is a really good indicator of low stomach acid, like poor digestion, and then also SIBO, because what's happening is as I eat, that gas that's being created in my small intestine is traveling upwards into my stomach, and then my whole stomach just gets bloated. So this is the same day, by the way. These photos were taken on the same day. This is me in the morning, and then this is me in the evening. And I just want you to imagine this happening every day for I'm gonna say 3.5 years, because obviously this doesn't happen anymore. As you can imagine, that has greatly affected so much of my life. So much of my life. I'm not even gonna go into it, but it's not a fun place to be, which is why I'm here talking to y'all, because if you're experiencing this, I just want you to know it's very treatable and should not take you 4 years to treat. Um, so how it happens, low stomach acid, and again, we'll get into that in a little bit, slow gut motility, structural issues, stress. Stress is the root cause of all of this. If there's a hierarchy, it's stress, gut issues, everything else. And we'll get into that. For me, it was prep. So prepping, obviously very stressful on the body. I was not in a place mentally to prep. Yes, I executed prep, but afterwards I binge ate so bad. And when food is constantly in your system, you aren't going to have good motility. You're not going to be able to flush that food out. It's going to sit in your stomach and ferment, thus overgrowth. And that is how I got to exhibit B over here. How to treat this. So low FODMAP diet is what I would recommend. Every practitioner has their different methods. Some people are like stupid strict with it. I've had a lot of success not having to be insanely strict with my diet, but I do stay on the lower FODMAP side of things just so I'm not feeding the bacteria as I'm trying to kill it off, because the bacteria is going to feed off fermentable carbohydrates and sugars. So you just want to eliminate those things while you're killing it off, and then you can go in later and reintroduce them. Some people go the antibiotic route. If you go to a doctor, they're probably going to give you rifaximin, neomycin. I did a round of both of those. I've responded way better to herbals. Now, herbal route, way longer, more expensive, but it is not as harsh on your gut. It doesn't wipe out the beneficial flora as much. Um, so that's just what I've opted for, and I've responded better to. Now, some people might, opt for the antibiotics and do well with it. Most of my clients do the herbal route though. Or you could do elemental diet. Elemental diet is basically liquid. I did this and I felt amazing on it, but as soon as I reintroduced food, my symptoms came back. I know people, this has worked great for them. It's very, very strict. Obviously, you're drinking liquid for 14 to 21 days. So not ideal for everyone, but it is something that you could look into if you just needed to bring down inflammation quickly. And then prokinetics, we'll talk about those later, and obviously addressing the root cause. You can get rid of your SIBO, but if you don't address the root cause, it's going to come back. For me, mine was prep. And obviously, next time I prep, I'm going to know how to handle the stress of it. And then I'm not going to binge eat. So this better not ever come back. Candida. So Candida is a type of yeast. It actually lives in our body like in normal amounts. It's just when it overgrows, it becomes an issue. So it's in our gut, in our mouth, and on our skin. When bacteria are low or we're on antibiotics, any type of stress to the body that is suppressing our immune system can allow this to overgrow. So I see this a lot in people who have mold. Mold or Lyme disease. Mold weakens the immune system and allows for Candida to overgrow. I 100% had Candida because I ate so much damn sugar after my show. And so that grew, and I got rid of most of it. I'm dealing with a little bit right now that I'm just tacking on to my SIBO protocol. But some of the symptoms you can experience, bloating or gas, but it's not going to be that upper abdominal bloating I showed you. It's going to be lower abdominal, almost like you have a little pooch. Um, Kind of like if you were on your period or something, but it doesn't go away. It always kind of just sits there. It's just this constant bloating. And if you have sugar or you have carbohydrates, it might flare up. Or you can also get really lightheaded, kind of like a tipsy feeling almost. Sugar cravings. I always thought I just had a sweet tooth. I was like, oh, I just love sweets. That's how I am. That's how I'm always going to be. That's not really a thing. It's stemming from our gut. There's a big gut brain connection, and Candida was living in my gut, telling my brain, hey, we need sugar to survive, feed us. And so then my thoughts were like, oh, I just have a sweet tooth. I need some sugar. Now that I've eradicated mostly everything, my sweet tooth is damn near gone. It is probably, honestly, one of my favorite symptoms that has gone away. The fact that I don't have a sugar craving 24/7, because that's super annoying to try and fight all the time. You could have fatigue, brain fog, reoccurring yeast infections. This is a big one. If you have constant UTIs, there is a problem in your gut. What can happen is that bacteria can make its way into the urinary tract and cause an infection. Our vaginal flora is very similar to our gut flora. So again, if you're having issues with yeast infections, issues with UTIs, you really, really need to dive into the gut because that is not normal. White coating on your tongue or maybe a yellow coating, and then skin rashes. So acne on the face, and then or it could be on the body. You could have yeast on the skin, or you could have it stemming from the gut that's coming out on the skin, and then rashes. Treatment for this, antifungals. So I'm on an herbal right now, but they do have antibiotics for it. And then obviously you have to be a little more strict because it is a little harder to kill off, and it does feed off that sugar. So I'm eliminating pretty much all sugar right now, aside from a little bit of fruit. Okay. Is everyone tracking this right now? Can I just get a yes in the chat from everybody? Are we here? Are we still with me? Yes, yes. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Y'all can definitely give me feedback later if I yapped way too much or talked too fast or this didn't make sense to you. I'm flowing right now. And we got a ways to go, so bear with me. Okay, so this is what a GI map looks like. The testing you hear about me talk all the time. Learning I may have more gut issues than I thought. Yeah, it's a lot. The gut is very complex. This is only a little bit of it, but this is the GI map where we kind of start because it tells us a lot. Now, no, it's not 100% accurate, but it gives us a really good foundation, and we can take your symptoms and align them with what we see on this map. So it is a stool test. You have to poop in a little cup and scoop it out and put it in a little bottle. Anytime I have a client do this, they're like, Kayla, what the hell? Like, this is disgusting. It's really nasty, but we get all this beautiful insight. So this is my GI map from 2022. So this is when I like first started my journey. On the left, you'll see any pathogens. So you'll see like salmonella's on here, C. diff is on here. Now, I didn't have any at the time, but if you have if you have low stomach acid, you might see some of these pathogens get into your gut because again, we don't have that line of defense that's there. And then we have other parasitic pathogens on here, which I didn't have any of those, thank goodness. And then over to the right, we have H. pylori right here. I had a little bit of H. pylori, but as you can see, it's under the reference range, so I didn't really worry about it. I think we ended up treating it with Matulity anyway, and my next GI map came back and it was gone. But if it is high, it'll be flagged here, and we'll definitely need to treat that. Now, the commensal bacteria, this is going to be our good gut flora. And by the way, most of this bacteria is what is in our large intestine. So if we're looking for SIBO, we cannot see SIBO on this GI map. SIBO, I'll show you that test in a little bit, but that's a breath test. That's in our small intestine. So this is going to show what's in our large intestine. But let's say someone has a lot of overgrowth in the large intestine and they have SIBO symptoms. we can pretty much guess that they have SIBO and we can go ahead and treat it. We don't need to pay for the SIBO test. So if someone's having a lot of symptoms, sometimes I'll say, hey, let's just do a GI map instead of a SIBO test. And then we see other things that might need to be treated and we can treat them both at the same time versus doing both tests if we really feel like more is going on. So you'll see my gut flora, my good bacteria is just wiped out. Down here, this bacteria phyla, these two right here are what make up like 80% of our good bacteria. Mine are wiped out. Now, I was on birth control for 10 years, which is oral, goes into your gut. It can definitely affect your microbiome. I've been on multiple antibiotics. I was having really bad yeast infections in college, which now looking back, I know why. And then I just went through prep, which is obviously very, very stressful. I had actually gone through like 3 preps at this point and just wiped out my gut flora. So I had no good bacteria fighting for me. And then when we go to our opportunistic bacteria over here on the left side, this is going to be our quote unquote bad bacteria. So you can see I had some elevations here and there were some other ones that were present, but overall I have a lot of bad guys that are built up and not a lot of good guys. So I like to think about it as a meadow with weeds and flowers. We can have a little bit of weeds if we have enough flowers to cover them up, but if we have too many weeds and not enough flowers, then we've got to pull out all the weeds and plant more flowers so we have a garden full of mostly just flowers, or at least that's what we can see. So right now I had a lot of weeds, not a lot of flowers. Now, for how bad my SIBO was, I'm going to show you on a second, but my overgrowth in the small intestine was insane, like through the roof insane. You would have thought I would have had a little more overgrowth on my in my colon, but I didn't. So that's where sometimes we need to run that SIBO test to see how bad it truly is. These other inflammatory markers weren't popping up on here. Usually those will come down when we treat the bad guys and we take care of like the intestinal permeability and leaky gut and all of that, which I'll talk about later. Now, Candida down here at the bottom usually does not pop up on a GI map. It likes to hide behind the biofilm. Biofilm is like a sticky web that goes all in our intestinal lining, and we have to break down that web in order to see what's behind it. So if you do not take a biofilm disruptor before taking your GI map, you're going to miss a lot of stuff. So essentially we have to break down that net. So all of the parasites and pathogens hiding behind it will show up on your GI map. So the fact that mine showed up on this GI map means my Candida was really, really bad because it's hard to get it to pop up on here. You could not have Candida show up and still have Candida or yeast overgrowth if you have symptoms. Same thing with parasites. These like to hide. It's really hard a lot of times for them to show up, but if you have symptoms, there are other ways we can kind of dive into them and treat those. Golly, I'm just yapping away. Now, worms didn't have any of those either. I did end up doing a parasite cleanse, and this is gross, but I had little eggs in my poop. I know that's disgusting. Some people will poop like literal worms. It's kind of insane. I think everyone should do a parasite cleanse at some point in their life because God knows what is in our food, but just keep that in mind. And then down here we have our intestinal health section. So this is kind of my favorite section because this tells us where our intestinal health markers are at. Steatocrit, this is telling us how well we're breaking down our fats. So I mentioned later, if you have floating stool, you have bad bile flow, you had your gallbladder removed, you're not going to be breaking down your fat very well. I didn't have any fat in my stool, so go me. That was a win for me. Elastase, this is showing us our pancreatic enzymes. So we always talk about digestive enzymes. This is a good indicator of how much we're producing. Mine was kind of in the middle, so I definitely needed some support there. Beta-glucuronidase, this is an enzyme in the gut that is basically going to unravel estrogen. So if you're dealing with estrogen dominant symptoms, which I wasn't, very odd, I wasn't even having a cycle at this time, but this is just telling me that if I was, then I probably would have been more on the estrogen dominant side. So basically estrogen goes into the liver to get it gets packaged up like a little present, and then it gets sent out into the gut to get excreted with bile. Again, why bile is so important. But if we have beta-glucuronidase, this little enzyme in our digestive tract. It's going to unravel that present, and that estrogen is going to recirculate through the body, which can cause strong estrogen dominant symptoms. So obviously we don't want that, which is another reason why fiber and bile flow is so important. So I definitely needed to work on my liver support in that section. Now, the blood in the stool, this is like, we talked about Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. If you have blood in your stool, this would pop up here, and we would probably want to do a colonoscopy. This would be one of those times we would actually want to do a colonoscopy, because you should not have blood in your stool. Now, if you took your GI map when you were on your period, or you had like a hemorrhoid and some blood got in your stool, then I'm not really going to worry about it. But we also want to look at this calprotectin. If you were to have Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, this calprotectin would be through the roof. This is a sign of inflammation in the colon. So we can kind of look at those two things to see how much is truly going on in the colon. Secretory IgA, this is a really good one. This is essentially showing our immune system in our gut. About 70% of our immune system is housed in our gut. And so when our gut's in bad shape, we're most likely going to get sick more often. I got sick 6 times last year, which is absolutely insane. But look at which this was 2022, but it wasn't great last year either. Look at where my immune system was. Trash, garbage. And this is going to go into leaky gut that we'll talk about in a little bit. But I see this so much with shift workers that are under a lot of stress, just with their 12-hour shifts, working the night shift. And I see it a lot with athletes, because we push our body to the limits and our immune system is suppressed. Our gut gets inflamed, and then our immune system, goes out the window. So keep that in mind for later, this little marker right here. Anti-gliadin, this is showing if we have a gluten intolerance, not necessarily an allergy, obviously not celiac, but this just shows that gluten is causing some inflammation in my gut. If you're not eating gluten at the time, then it's not going to show up, but I was eating gluten, so it's showing me that it was having an inflammatory effect. And then this little activation protein right here, this is supposed to elevate if you have a parasite. It's not very accurate, so we just kind of leave that be. But the main thing I want you to take from this is keep this secretory IgA in mind, because I'm going to reference back to that on the next slide. Now, this is the SIBO test. This is the one, when did I do this? 2024. So as you can see down at the bottom where it says CH4, this methane number was a 19. We want that below 10. When I took my first methane test, I was at an 84. So just imagine you're supposed to be sub 10. Homegirl was like way up here. It was insane. Lacey said it's the highest she's ever seen. My hydrogen has been fine. I've never had an issue with that. But basically with this breath test, you're going to drink a little sugar solution. That sugar solution goes into the gut, and those bacteria, if they're present, are going to feed off that solution, and they're going to produce gases. So you breathe into a little bag every 20 minutes. This was a 3-hour test. So I breathed into a bag for 20 minutes, and then it went into 30-minute increments to show me how much gas was being produced. So this last test I took was at a 10, literally at the exact detectable limit. So I'm doing 4 more weeks of kill off to hopefully get that down. But we're very close. I mean, we started at 84 and we're down to a 10. So super happy about that. Now, testing. GI map around 350. If you go online, you have to be a practitioner to order this, first of all. So you're going to have to go through some type of the functional practitioner. Your Western medicine doctor is not going to order this. Insurance is not going to cover it. That's why a lot of people don't run it. And even if they did run it, they might not know what to do with it, because oh my gosh, see, look, I'm talking too fast. That's not what's taught in our Western medicine system, which is okay, but just keep in mind that one's a little more pricey. Lacey can get it for $350. Again, she is a practitioner. She's an RD, a registered dietitian, which is why I partner with her, because I will soon be able to order GI maps. I'm finishing up some continued education, but for the time being, I hit her up and she orders all the labs for me, because she has partnerships with all the labs, and then they get sent to my clients. So GI maps around 350, SIBO breath test around 240. Now this one you can ask your GI doctor. Some of my clients have told me they refuse to run it. Why? I literally don't know. But you could order it through her. The one at my GI doc was $345, which was really expensive, but I got insurance to hopefully cover that. So I would try and see if you can go and get insurance to cover it. If you don't want to deal with getting an appointment with a specialist, or you don't have insurance or whatever, you can just order it through Leaky, or we can kind of go off symptoms. H. pylori, there's also a breath test for that. The only issue with that in the stool, if you do it through the stool, it's going to give you a number. If you do it through the breath, sometimes it's just going to say positive or negative. So you might have it, but it might not be high enough to actually show up positive. So that's why usually we're running a GI map anyway, and we can just see it on the GI map, but you could get that breath test through a GI doctor as well. Candida, as you saw on the GI map, doesn't always show up on there. There are blood labs you can do and get drawn to show if your Candida albicans are high. I like to use the GI map and go off symptoms. I can usually tell if someone has yeast just based off their symptoms. And then when they go through a protocol, a lot of their like sugar cravings, acne, white tongue, stuff like that, lower abdominal bloating, all of that goes down. So we don't really need to go and do any type of blood lab, but it's really just walking through the symptoms and figuring out what makes most sense. Now, I would take a picture of this blood panel down here. This is the one thing that blows my mind. Absolutely insane. This is a ridiculous amount of blood work, and you're testing everything under the sun: thyroid panel, antibodies, lab or sex hormone lab work. You're getting nutrients. You're getting everything here for $300. If you were to go online through Quest or MD Labs, any of those labs that you can just go online and order blood work and put these labs in, it would cost you over $2,000. Lacey, don't know how she does it, but she partners with, I think it's Ultra Labs, and she gets it for 300. So if anything, I highly recommend getting your blood panel through her, because it's a freaking steal. And I would screenshot this. You can go and ask your doctor, your gynecologist, or your primary care to run as much of this as they will through insurance. I've never in my life seen them do the whole panel, but some girls come back and they will agree to run a good amount of this. Now, if you are going to do this and you're not on hormonal birth control and you're having a menstrual cycle, make sure you do this on day 21 of your cycle. Day 1 is the first day you bleed, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. Okay, so that's all the diagnosis. Now, how the heck did y'all get here? Meaning, how did you mess up your gut? How did all these symptoms start? And let's kind of dive into that. So this is where we have our sympathetic and our parasympathetic system. Can you just say yes or no in the chat if you're familiar with these two different types of nervous systems? Yes, yes. If you're my client, you're for sure aware, because I've been drilling it into y'all's brains. Yes, yes, no. Okay. So sympathetic is our fight or flight. These are our two different types of our nervous system. We have our fight or flight, where if you're getting chased by a bear, that is what's sending your body into fight or flight. Well, hold on, let me not get ahead of myself. Parasympathetic is our rest and digest. So in order to have good digestion, we need to be in rest and digest, which is our calm state. Most of us live in fight or flight all the time. There are so many different things that can bring us into fight or flight. It's not just major trauma. There are chronic stressors and there are little day-to-day stressors. Ideally, we should be able to go back and forth between the two. If I'm in the car and I'm in traffic and someone, flies by me and it like scares me for a second, I might go into fight or flight, but then I should be able to switch back over into rest and digest. Now, if we are in fight or flight for too long because of all these reasons right here, then our body's not going to be able to get back into that parasympathetic state. And that's when all of our issues start occurring. So some of the big ones that I see: overtraining and under eating. So many GI issues stem from this, and so many of y'all are continuing to train hard. And I know it's hard to stop, but if I can stop training after turning pro, then you can too, because obviously I do this for a living. Like, my physique is my marketing, and I had to just stop. So if I can do it, I promise you can do it. And then obviously under eating is another stressor on the body, bodybuilding prep, having your body in a deficit, any type of dieting is stressful on the body. Women are designed to have body fat. We are designed to reproduce, make babies. If we are getting chased by a bear, our body is not thinking, hey, we should make a baby right now. No. So that's what I want you to think about. If your body is stressed, it is not thinking about reproducing. You're not going to be able to sustain a pregnancy. Um, Training fasted is stressful. Now, some people can tolerate this. It just depends what state you're in. Poor sleep or lack of sleep. This is a big one. I could go on a tangent about that. Trauma. This is something that's a touchy subject. I won't dive too deep into it, but I do see this a lot with autoimmunes. I'm gonna say most people with autoimmunes have trauma from their childhood that they have not dealt with. They might have trauma they don't even know about or know they haven't dealt with. They feel like they've dealt with it, but their nervous system has not shifted back into that safe place, and their nervous system is still in this like subconscious fight or flight mode, thinking that they're still in that same situation they were maybe 20 years ago. But again, they've never fully pulled themselves out into that rest and digest state. So if you go on American PCC ACEs quiz, you can take a little 10-question quiz and it'll give you some insight as to if you've had childhood trauma and maybe you don't even know about it. And that's just something that you can dive into and start to just heal from, because again, that's going to start your healing journey into all the other symptoms that you're experiencing. Work-related stress, we all work too hard, too much, never take breaks. Relationship stress, mold. If you, especially in Texas, it's so moist. If you have lived in mold in the past or are currently living in mold, those mold spores are most likely in your body, and this is going to suppress your immune system. You will not heal. I have a few girls right now who are currently living in mold, trying to heal. It's not going to work. Your immune system is literally just staying suppressed, like you're living in that environment. So if you suspect this, if you get sick all the time, if you have a lot of fatigue, hair falling out, and you know that you've lived in mold before or are currently living in it, and you might not even see it on the walls, but you're like, why am I getting sick so much? Something to look into. They throw up these apartment complexes and just don't even care anymore. Lyme disease, if you've ever been bitten by a tick, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. Shift work, that's a big one. Antibiotics, oral medications, hormonal birth control, those are all very, very stressful to the body, and those will wipe out your beneficial flora, especially antibiotics and Accutane. Even on your wedding day, I was happy stressed on my wedding day, but it's still in our body. We don't know the difference. It can't differentiate. Am I getting chased by a bear or am I about to marry the love of my life? All it feels is stress. And so we have to recognize that and again, drive our body back into that parasympathetic state. Some other ones: travel, nutrient deficiencies, dehydration, alcohol, caffeine, energy drinks. Don't get me on a tangent. Highly processed food, sugars and seed oils, endocrine disruptors. Y'all know the majority of those. Now, this is our vagus nerve. This is such a cool picture. I love this because it really shows you how the brain and the gut are connected. We have this massive nerve that goes from the end of our brain to literally every organ in the body. It is the main nerve of our parasympathetic system. So that rest and digest system that I always talk to you about. Now, it's going to stimulate stomach acid and digestive enzyme release. It's going to control your migrating motor complex, which is basically your gut housekeeping system that I'm getting ahead of myself, but every 3 to 4 hours, that's why I tell y'all to wait 3 to 4 hours to eat. In that time period, the migrating motor complex will kick in and kind of like sweep food through the stomach, through the gut. So it's very important that we are in our rest and digest to allow for that to kick on. It's going to control our heart rate and breathing. And then we have a huge gut brain connection with mood. Anytime my stomach hurts or I am bloated, I am so irritable and pissed off. And I'm sure y'all have the same response. You don't want to talk to anyone. You just want to lay on the couch and cry. There's such a big connection there. So this picture right here shows you how important it is to focus on your parasympathetic system, because that is literally what is controlling your digestion. Now, how can we work on the vagus nerve? Sunlight within the first 30 minutes of waking, that is telling our body, hey, we're not nocturnal It's telling our body, hey, it's bright outside. It's time to wake up, and we need to have that morning cortisol spike. If you are a shift worker, this is going to be a little difficult for you, and we can navigate this. But the best thing you can do for your nervous system is to get outside in the sunlight each morning. Or if you wake up and it's dark, you can get a little happy light and you can get them on Amazon, put it on your desk while you're getting ready. And that way you're getting some light, letting your body know it's time to wake up. Infrared saunas, groundings. I know this all sounds very woo-woo, but I have a huge testimonial for this stuff that I'm about to share with y'all. Acupuncture, I've literally seen people get pregnant from this, like be infertile and they start doing acupuncture and they literally get pregnant because it regulates their nervous system so well. Like it's so powerful. I cannot even begin to explain it because it doesn't sound like it would be, but this is your key right here. Like your parasympathetic nervous system is your key to healing. Journaling, massage, meditation, yoga, walking, prayer, breath work, all the things. Now, I talked about this on my story the other day, so I'm not going to harp on it too much, but I put off breath work for the past 4 years. I was like, yeah, cool. I breathe. I'll do some deep belly breathing, whatever. I've had glute pain for 2 years now. My glutes been locked up, have done everything under the sun to fix it, have found nothing that will help, nothing that will even give me any type of relief. Come to find out, we store so much as females, especially, we store all of our trauma in our lower abdomen, in our lower back, and in our glutes. So if you have lower back pain, you have glute pain, it can even radiate down your leg, then it could be trauma. I started doing the breath work, and I kid you not, my glute pain is just like slowly drifted away, which is super weird because that seems so simple. But what's happening is I'm stimulating my vagus nerve and I'm getting my body out of fight or flight. I've been in fight or flight for 4 years straight because of my gut issues. When you bloat like that every single day, your body is in such a state of inflammation and stress. And then I'm thinking about it all the time and I'm worried, like waking up, am I going to be able to function today? How am I going to feel? What am I going to look like? It's just this constant state of stress. And the breath work, think about like going in training pushes us into a sympathetic state. Breath work pushes us into a parasympathetic state. So sitting here and watching TV with my husband is relaxing, but that's not truly driving me into that parasympathetic state. You have to do things to activate that part of your nervous system. You can't just relax. So the breath work for me has been absolutely life-changing. And honestly, that's what I give credit to when it comes to my glute pain healing. And then my bloating coming down. Another testimonial, real quick. My mom had lower back pain for maybe like 10 years after her dad passed away. And she realized one day she was on a retreat and they told her, you're holding on to his pain because you're like, if he had to suffer and he passed away from that, why should you be healthy? Why shouldn't you have to suffer as well? And as soon as she allowed herself to release that and be like, it's okay to be healthy, her back pain went away. Crazy. Crazy how the mind and the body work. Okay, stomach acid and stress. All gut issues stem from stress, as we just talked about. Stress equals low stomach acid. So you have stress, low stomach acid, then you have the cascade of all the gut issues you're experiencing. It's going to slow your motility, then creating things like SIBO. It's going to hinder our ability to break down food. It's going to allow pathogens into the body, hinder biostimulation, hinder nutrient absorption. You've probably gone to the doctor, and how many of y'all in the chat have you gone to the doctor and they put you on a PPI, like omeprazole? Anybody? One, two, three. Um, this was the first thing they did for me. I had pain in my stomach and they were like, here's a PPI. Now let's break this down. I had SIBO. I had an overgrowth in the small intestine because I had low stomach acid. So now we're going in and we're giving me more, we're lowering my stomach acid even more, making the problem worse. The reason I had stomach like heartburn is because that gas was traveling upwards and causing pressure and pain in my stomach. As soon as I started to kill off the SIBO, the bacterial overgrowth, my stomach pain went away. So I don't know why they just throw PPIs at things, but PPIs are literally, that's a proton pump inhibitor. It lowers your stomach acid. That is literally the cause of SIBO. Like we're doing the opposite. Most people don't have high stomach acid. Like no one's just walking around with super sufficient stomach acid because we're all under too much stress. Okay, hang on. I need a water break. We're getting there, guys, I promise. I hope y'all are getting something out of this. Leaky gut. So remember the secretory IgA that I talked about that was very low on my GI map? That is showing our immune system is suppressed and essentially that our gut lining is compromised and inflamed. Now, when we hear leaky gut, people will come to me and be like, the doctor said I have leaky gut. Cool. What else? What else? Like you could have inflammation in the gut lining, but that doesn't really tell me anything. We have to figure out how it started, what else is on in the body that has been able to oh my gosh, that is there because of the leaky gut, like the parasites and pathogens and systemic inflammation. So when the lining of your small intestine becomes inflamed, I want you to think about just a bunch of doors in your small intestine. Now, these doors open to let in nutrients and they're supposed to close to block out like pathogens and toxins, things that should not be allowed into our bloodstream. Now, when you have leaky gut and you have inflammation, all of these doors just open. So anything and everything can get into your bloodstream, and that's going to cause systemic inflammation. Now, when that happens, well, hold on, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll go down to the bottom. When that happens, we have, or what creates that, I should say, is chronic stress, infection. So things like the bacterial overgrowth, the Candida, the viruses. So really we have the low stomach acid from the stress, and then we have the bacterial overgrowths and the viruses, and then that's going to cause inflammation to the gut lining. But we can also get impaired gut lining from chronic stress. I've seen people not have any pathogens or overgrowth, but because they're so stressed out, their gut lining is compromised. So we just have to heal that up and remove the inflammation or things that are causing an inflammatory response, like the processed foods and gluten and dairy and things like that. And we'll get into that as well. Poor diet can cause an inflamed gut lining. So ultra processed foods, high sugar, alcohol. Gluten is one of those things. You might not have a gluten intolerance or gluten allergy, but eating gluten when your gut is in this state is essentially just going in and opening all those doors. So if you have a healthy gut, then you probably don't need to worry about that. But if you don't, then gluten is something that is going to cause inflammation for everyone simply by opening those doors. It's not that you're going to have an immediate reaction, but you might have a reaction days later because it's caused that or that inflammation in your gut lining, which is then allowed for things to get into your bloodstream, cause systemic inflammation. Medications can also impair the gut lining, toxin exposures, nutrient deficiencies. Now, in a healthy gut, all of these doors should stay shut, only open when needed. And then in a leaky gut, they're opening, and so those digestive particles can slip through. Now, because this causes an inflammatory response overall, you can get bloating from this, food sensitivities. So you might eat a food and not feel well, but it's not because you're allergic to the food. It's just because your gut lining is impaired and those doors aren't shut and those toxins are getting into your bloodstream. So a lot of times we'll remove stuff and then heal the gut lining and bring those foods back in, and the client is just fine. You might have a lot of brain fog, fatigue. This is where a lot of acne and skin issues come from. Because, like I said, you have the inflammation in your gut, things are getting into the bloodstream, and then they're purging through the skin. So, that is definitely an area that we need to address if we are dealing with any type of eczema, rashes, or acne issues. Joint pain and stiffness, autoimmune flare ups. Anytime someone is having an autoimmune flare up, and we'll talk about this as well. They're having issues with their gut lining because, again, they're having that systemic inflammation, which is triggering an immune response. So when our body sees all these little particles in the bloodstream that shouldn't be there, our immune system kicks on and it's like, shoot, we got to go attack all those particles and fight them. And then that's when those autoimmune flare-ups happen because those are an inflammatory response. You can have mood changes, anxiety, And then nutrient malabsorption. If our gut is not in a good place, we're not absorbing our nutrients. You could take all the vitamins in the world, eat all the good foods, but you could still be nutrient deficient because we're not absorbing them. Okay, gut and thyroid connection. This is a big one. So low thyroid lowers stomach acid and slows motility, leading to overgrowth. If we do not have a sufficient amount of T3, which is our active thyroid hormone, then we are going to have slow motility. Now, proper gut function is also going to allow for proper nutrient absorption, and we're going to be able to absorb those nutrients that are important for thyroid function, like your iodine, your selenium, your zinc, your iron. So if we have an impaired gut, we maybe aren't absorbing those nutrients, and that's leading to the low thyroid, or we could have low thyroid from something else, which is leading to slow gut motility. So they really go hand in hand. Now, 30 to 40% of our conversion from the inactive thyroid hormone T4 to the active thyroid hormone T3 happens in the liver and 20% in the gut. Again, if your gut's not in a good place, we're probably not having conversion. So you might be making a lot of T4, but it's not turning into T3, which is the active form. And then that's because your gut's impaired, or we're having liver congestion. When you go to the doctor, please ask them to do free T3. A lot of times they do TSH, which is basically just your brain telling your thyroid how much to create, but it doesn't tell us what's actually being created. And even if we have T4, doesn't mean it's converting to T3. If you're on T4 medication and you still feel like shit, doesn't mean it's converting into T3. I see that all the time. People are on T4 medication and their T3 is still low because it's not converting for liver issues, gut issues, overall inflammation issues. In managing hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism, autoimmune conditions like Hashimoto's, Graves', the gut has to be assessed. And hold on, let me pull this up. When the gut becomes leaky, the substances enter the bloodstream. We have that immune response. And then we have what's called molecular mimicry. I'm not going to get like too nerdy on y'all, but basically the body sees all those particles in the bloodstream and it resembles the thyroid gland tissue. So not only is your immune system kicking on and attacking those particles, but if you have an autoimmune condition like Hashimoto's, it's also going to attack your thyroid. So that's why it's so important that we heal the gut in any case of hypothyroidism or autoimmunes in general, because it all stems from an immune response. And then that's going to create the thyroid antibodies that we see, which in terms is Hashimoto's. What else about thyroid medication? I don't want to go too far off, but thyroid medication for some people is extremely beneficial and necessary. We just need to ask why we're using it. Were we just thrown on it because our levels were low, or did we try to address our levels and we were unable to, get the desired result, then we got on it? Or do you have an autoimmune and you have thyroid damage and you have to be on thyroid medication for the rest of your life? We just don't want to rely on it if we can fix the root cause. Whoa, did someone just draw on my screen? How did you do that? Um, okay. Now we're going to go into nutrient status. So this is a client of mine, that large blood panel that I showed y'all. These are some nutrients that were on there. I just pulled them up so you could kind of see what it looked like. Notice how everything is tanked for her. Vitamin A, B1, B2, B3, what is that one? B6, pretty much all her B vitamins. I see this often, that everyone's B vitamins are tanked. When the body's under stress, it utilizes a lot more B vitamins. And then with vitamin A, this is super critical for our hair, skin, and nails. So we definitely don't want this to be low. This is just a little snapshot, but if we're taking all the supplements under the sun, we're eating all the right foods, and our gut is not in a good place, we're not absorbing anything. It's already hard to absorb supplements. Now our gut's not in a good place, so we're really not absorbing anything. So all of these are tanked. We could question here, if we saw this panel, we could question the gut and possibly having to dive into the gut to figure out why these are so tanked. Now, a lack of nutrients is another stressor on the body. If your nutrients are not up to par, then you are not going to be able to metabolic. How are y'all drawing? Y'all have got to stop drawing on my screen. I don't know how to erase it. Oh, wait, maybe I can't erase it. Okay, there we go. Sorry. My ADHD is not doing well with that. That's where supplements can come into play. We can come in and replenish these. We can double down on these, double dose them, make sure we get you up to par, because if the nutrients are not in a good place, then our body's under stress. We do not feel safe. We cannot heal. We have to feel safe and be in a parasympathetic state in order to heal, or our body is just stuck in that fight or flight. It is in no place to allow for us to heal. So very temporary that we utilize that. If you've worked with me or Lacey, you'll know, like, we're going to throw supplements your way, and this is why. Depletion can affect the hair, the skin, the nails, libido, energy, mood, thyroid, sex production. Every metabolic process in the entire body utilizes nutrients. So they are like the building blocks to all of the processes that happen in the body. I highly recommend testing this if you're missing your period, because this could be a big reason why. And then also, just to include some other nutrients, making sure we're hydrating with sodium and potassium, not just water. And I'll go into that in a little bit. All right, this is my favorite part. I love talking about the period. Most women don't even know anything about their menstrual cycle. Like, we should have been taught this in junior high. I think it's so cool. I think it's so fascinating. I love having a natural cycle. And I had debilitating cramps when I was 14. When I first got my period, my mom thought I was constipated. The fact that she did not know about this is crazy. Um, Gave me so many laxatives, and then I started bleeding, and I was like, Mom, I think I just need ibuprofen. Like, I think I'm just starting my period. So anyways, that's kind of a funny story, but that's why it's so important that I teach y'all. So we have our follicular phase and our luteal phase. So up here we have our 28 days, which is where our cycle should occur. Day 1 is the start of your bleed. So when you start bleeding, that is day 1 of your period. That is the first day of your follicular phase. Day 14 is when we should ovulate. So that's when that egg should drop. When that egg drops, that egg can survive for 24 hours. A lot of people think we can get pregnant the entire month. You can only get pregnant in the 24 hours that egg is alive. Now, the sperm, the little effers, can live for 5 days. So let's say homie gets a little sperm in you 5 days before your cycle, and he's just vibing in there, and then you ovulate, he could definitely fertilize that egg and you could be prego my ego. Or on the back end, if you ovulate and then he finishes in you, or you get a little pre-cum or whatever the case may be in 24 hours, then you could also get pregnant. So I like to create a massive window. If you use the Flow app to track, you'll be able to see a huge window of when this happens. And I'm not gonna lie, me and Trav avoid like a fat chunk of time because I'm not messing around with this. I'm grateful that I ovulate pretty much on the same day, that 14 day, but some people don't know you can track your temperature. So your temperature will spike on that day. A lot of people use their Oura ring to track this, but we really want to figure out when you're ovulating. So that way we can make sure you do not get pregomyogo unless you want to. So once that happens, that egg is going to create progesterone, and that's why we see in purple right here this big progesterone spike. So we'll see it's very low in our follicular phase, and then we have ovulation, that egg drops, and then we have progesterone production. Now this is what sustains our luteal phase. If you end up bleeding or spotting before that 28-day mark, that's because your progesterone is not being sustained, and that means we have some type of stressor on the body that is not allowing you to, again, sustain that entire luteal phase. It goes back to the stress. If we're getting chased by a bear, our body is not in a place to make a baby. So if we are in a stressed out state, we might have an early cycle. If you were to get pregnant on day 14, you would sustain this progesterone for the duration of your entire pregnancy. So that's why it's so important that we're not in fight or flight when we are trying to get a period. Now estrogen, on the other hand, estrogen is going to get heightened in our follicular phase. So that's why a lot of y'all will tell me after you start your period, you're like, I'm way stronger. Estrogen gets demonized. It's very important. We just don't want it to get out of hand, and we don't want it to be heightened in comparison to progesterone. This chart is way off. Progesterone is actually way higher than what estrogen is here. But if we have estrogen dominance, then we have way more estrogen than we do. I'm not going to say than progesterone because they're measured differently, but the ratio is off. So we have more estrogen, and that's where we get those super heavy periods, a lot of breast tenderness, a lot of cramping, mood swings. That's when you hear all of that stuff. It's not that estrogen is bad, but we have to get you ovulating and get progesterone up so it balances out the estrogen and we don't have those symptoms. Okay, let me shut up about that now. Now, this is how your gut affects your period. If you're not having a cycle or you're not ovulating, you might be bleeding, but you're not actually ovulating, and you could not actually get pregnant right now or sustain a pregnancy. So if you're trying to get pregnant, this is going to be very important for you. Leaky gut, we already know, causes systemic inflammation that affects the brain. So our hypothalamus, pituitary, those are in the brain. Now the brain is responsible for LH and FSH. So these are signals that tell the ovaries what to produce. Now, if you're on hormonal birth control, basically this castrates us. That takes away that communication. That way we don't ovulate and we don't get pregnant. So it just kind of shuts everything down. And then you have synthetic hormones that are just taking over for you. But if you're not on hormonal birth control, or you're on, like the copper IUD or something, some people still ovulate on Kyleena. It's rare, but some people do. FSH is going to signal the ovaries to grow the follicles, and then that's going to create the estrogen, so in our follicular phase. And then LH is going to trigger ovulation, so that's going to support progesterone throughout the luteal phase. So basically, our brain is sending out these signals that tell the ovaries, hey, you need to create this, hey, you need to do that. So if we have systemic inflammation in the body from our gut, then our brain signaling is off. It's not signaling those signals to the ovaries, and we're not having a period. I hope that makes sense. So this can impair ovulation, and it can impair progesterone production because you need ovulation to produce progesterone. Therefore, we get estrogen dominant symptoms. It's like if you're getting chased by a bear, can't make baby. So down here, I have a little diagram. Gut inflammation goes into an inflammatory response, goes into that brain suppression, disrupted signaling, and then impaired ovulation, low progesterone. So if you haven't had a period in 6 years now and you had a pituitary tumor, this again would explain why that period's not happening, because there's a signaling issue with the brain and the ovaries. And I'm really glad you got that checked out. If we see high prolactin on blood labs, we definitely want to question if there's a pituitary tumor there. And sometimes it's benign, but we definitely want to check that out. So now y'all's favorite part, how the heck do we fix it? Now that I've yapped about everything for long enough, I hope y'all have a good foundation though. I think education is so important. I want y'all to understand what's happening in your body, because if you don't understand it, you're not going to be like really bought into the process. And knowledge is power. Like when you know what's happening in your body, you're like, hell yeah, I can fix this. Like I have a better understanding, less anxiety, and you're ready to just kind of move forward with things. So you'll hear oftentimes the 4 Rs: remove, replace, repair, reinoculate. My version's a little different. So the first thing I want to do is remove, clear the muddy waters, clean up the diet. So this is anything that is causing any type of inflammation to the body, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Then we want to go in and we want to support the body. You're in a place where your body cannot support itself right now. So we've got to add in the additional supplements and the additional supportive work to help your body for the time being until you're healed and you can sustain all those processes on your own. Open up detox pathways. This is another big one. We detox through our skin. We always hear about like detox teas and all of that. Truly, our detox pathways are happening through the skin, the liver, the colon, the kidneys. So all of these things need to be open and working well. So when we kill these pathogens and bacteria off, we can get them out of the body. We want to remove everything. So we want to get the pathogens, bacteria, parasites out of the body. And then we want to reinoculate. We want to go in and replant the seeds so we can grow a bunch of pretty flowers after we have removed everything that would kill it off. The hardest part is when the specialists try to section the body, acting as if it's not related. Yes. So that's why, oh gosh, I'll send people to a specialist, but you have to see how the body works as a whole. You can't just treat one part of the body because it all plays together. Like everything coincides. You're never going to go to your gyno and they're going to be like, you should really look into your gut health. Like it's not going to happen. They're just going to ask you if you want to be on birth control. So that's why it's so important to take the functional approach and just really look at the body as a whole, because it's crazy how everything plays a role in one another. So first we want to remove. Now, this is the hard part. I hate the restriction of gut protocols, but it's sometimes it has to be done. I highly recommend, if you're wanting to do this by yourself and you're wanting to kind of figure out and navigate your symptoms, I would start with removing dairy, gluten, soy, artificial sweeteners, sugar alcohols, all those little, I'm not going to call out any names, but like all of the little sweet treats, low calorie stuff, protein bars, powders, and um starts with a bu and ends with uffins. They all have all these artificial sweeteners and sugar alcohols, and they're going to cause disruption in your microbiome. They're going to cause irritation. If you have a perfectly normal gut microbiome, these might not affect you, but if you're impaired, these can definitely cause some additional irritation, and you need to remove them at least for the time being. Refined sugars, alcohol, caffeine, eggs, if needed. Some people are intolerant to eggs. I would give it a go. If nothing else is working, pull them out, see if you feel any better. If not, add them back in because eggs are great. Caffeine, never on an empty stomach. That is a gut lining irritant. Y'all hear me talk about that all the time. If you want caffeine, have it after a meal, preferably after breakfast, not later in the afternoon. Um, I would give this 4 weeks minimum, keep everything super clean. And then from there, you can slowly add stuff back in, see how you respond. 4 meals a day, every 3.5 to 4 hours, again, to support that migrating motor complex. Eating 2 to 3 hours before bed to allow for proper digestion. We don't want to eat too far away from bedtime because then our blood sugar is going to drop overnight. If you've ever waken up around the hours of 2 and 3 a.m., it's most likely because you had a cortisol spike because your blood sugar dropped. So we want to make sure we're eating close enough to bed, a higher protein and fat meal. We don't want a high carb meal at this point to sustain you throughout the night, but we also want to allow time for that food to digest because overnight is not a time for stuff to digest. We want detoxification and repair to happen. For all my girlies trying to build muscle, this is so key for you. Sleep is so important. Does coffee after breakfast and supplementation interfere with the absorption of nutrients and supplements? No, sometimes, I mean, I guess it definitely depends what you're taking because there's so many different supplements out there, but if you're taking like thyroid hormone needs to be taken an hour before any food, supplements, coffee, anything like that. It needs to be all alone. Vitamins and stuff just need to be taken with your food. I would need like more specifics, but make sure you know if your vitamin is water or fat soluble so you are getting that full absorption. Oh wait, no, I want to go back. Oh crap. Oh, there we go. I was like, how do I go back? No hit or high intensity. Again, this is just so we get you out of that fight or flight mode. I would highly recommend doing breath work at this time. Stick to low FODMAP. You don't have to stay at low FODMAP. Just look up a low FODMAP diet. It'll pop up. You can see all the things in green. Stick with that for the time being. Then you can work your way up. Allow for 45 minutes of digestion before training. And that way your food is fully digest. When we're training, all of our blood is going to our extremities, right? Like if we're hitting legs, all of our blood's going to our legs. It's going away from our digestive tract. So if we do not allow our food to fully digest, then we go train, we're pulling that blood away from the digestive tract and you're not going to get proper digestion. And then check your water. So these are just other things that could be causing inflammation. Definitely use a water filter. Check the water in your area. Household products, beauty products, heat your food in glass. Don't use plastics. Avoid endocrine disruptors. That's a whole different ball game that we can go down later on at another time. Okay, opening up the detox pathways. So starting with the liver, this is a little diagram over here just to show you everything goes through the liver. Everything has to get detoxed through the liver. That's why it's so important to support the liver and focus on the liver, especially when we're taking any type of oral medication, because that's going to do even more harm to the liver. But that's going to create waste that's going to get excreted through kidneys or through bile, which is why it's so important, into the large intestine, out of the colon. So we want to open up these pathways because when we kill this stuff off, we don't want it recirculating in the body. So liver supporting bile flow. Again, this is going to bind to your estrogen and support that estrogen detoxification. Revive Liver is a phenomenal supplement. I use this and Lacey also recommends it. So if you don't believe me, she's not partnered with them. It's not just because I work with them. It's just a phenomenal liver supplement. Castor oil packs, you can literally take castor oil, smack it on your liver for 45 minutes a few times a week. That'll help with liver detoxification, and then liver loving foods. Skin, making sure we are getting in the sauna and sweating. We always hear about detoxing. It is really good to sweat. Now, on the back end of that, we want to make sure we hydrate, but we have to know why we're doing this. We want to sweat out all those toxins. So as you're doing kill off, if you do not allow your skin to sweat and get those toxins out, it may come out as acne. You might purge with acne. So just keep that in mind. And then with our colon, we've got to go to the bathroom. Again, if we're not pooping, all those toxins are sitting there and they're recirculating in our body. And that is how we get die-off symptoms that we're going to talk about later. And then also that's how we get fermentation and SIBO occurs or overgrowth occurs. And then kidneys, making sure we're hydrated. Now, how to shit. This is everyone's favorite slide. Can you put in the chat how many times you poop a day? I poop once a day, but I'm getting to 2, which is very exciting for me. 2, 1, 1. Okay. Y'all are some pooping queens over here. I haven't got a single 0. 2. Okay, so this is the Bristol stool chart. We really want to be a type 4. When I have a type 4, I'm texting my husband. I'm like, babe, vibes are high. Like it is going to be a damn good day. We also want to make sure there's no food in our stool and we don't have a floating stool. So that would be a perfect bowel movement. 1 time a day, awesome. If we feel like we're getting everything out. If we go 2 times a day, then that's even better. Like you're phenomenal. Now we don't want to go too much. You can go too much or have diarrhea, but once to twice a day is kind of what we're aiming for. Now, this is why hydration is so incredibly important. When we have a bowel movement, our body pulls water into the colon, and that's what helps push that stool through. So I always tell you how to hydrate, and it sounds stupid. Like I know we need water, whatever. I'm really bad about it, but no, I'm so serious. If you do not have water, you're gonna have this type 1 hard pebbly stool, or you're not gonna go at all, especially when you're traveling. Now, I'm less concerned about you drinking a gallon of water a day than I am about you actually hydrating with electrolytes. So aim for around 400 milligrams of potassium, 500 milligrams of sodium. These are the ones I give my girls. A cup of coconut water, high in potassium. You can do that with a 1/4 teaspoon of pink salt. You don't need to go buy electrolytes. You can literally put these in your water. New salt or potassium powder with pink salt. Pink salt just has a lot more minerals, and iodized salt is good. We want to use that a few times a day because iodine is essential for thyroid hormone production, but I wouldn't use iodized salt in your electrolytes just because you might be getting too much iodine throughout the day, and we wouldn't know that unless we tested. But I would use pink salt for electrolytes. The 310 packet electrolytes are the ones I'm actually using right now. They taste really good and they use stevia to flavor them. Stevia is an artificial, or not an artificial sweetener, a natural sweetener, comes from the stevia leaf. You can use stevia. I would opt for that instead of all the other artificials like aspartame and stuff like that. And then adrenal cocktail. So I would do 1 packet in the morning. As soon as you wake up, we want to nourish our adrenals. We want to support them as much as we can. So when we get that morning cortisol spike, hydrate. We get dehydrated overnight. We don't want to drink coffee and just shoot ourselves up more because then we're just going to crash. Make sure we're eating a nutrient dense breakfast, just starting our day off with nourishment. And then that's also going to help with a bowel movement. Now, if you're really not going, or you're in a place where you're in your healing journey and you just need to get stuff out, I would start with magnesium citrate. This is also good around the time of your cycle. If you need more help, you can go to oxide. Do not use too much oxide. You will hate your life and be in a ball on your bed for the rest of the day because you're going to be so crampy. I would start with citrate. 300 to 400 milligrams. Some people have to go all the way up to 600. I would not go past 800. That's a lot. But just titrate that up. And then my favorite one is Cascara sagrada. That's an herb. You can get it on Amazon. I can send y'all a link if you need it. Or Trifala, that is another herb on Amazon, and that's just going to help. It's not like a full-blown laxative where you're going to go diarrhea, because we don't want to completely clear everything out, because then you're going to be constipated the next few days, and then you're going to take a laxative and go diarrhea, and then be constipated the next few days. Like, we just want gentle help that pushes things through, just to keep things flowing so we can get a constant flow. We don't want to like throw everything out and then have to wait for food to travel back down. We want consistency. So these things are going to basically pull water into the colon to just kind of help like ease the bowel along. And then Cellcore Bowel Mover, that one's a little stronger, but that one's also really good. Now, prokinetics are different than laxatives. Laxatives are going to be more in the large intestine to get poop out. Prokinetics are going to be in the small intestine to keep things moving. So this is really important when you have SIBO like me, because I need food to get out of my small intestine as quick as possible so it doesn't feed that overgrowth. That's when things like ginger, Motil Pro is what I take. That's on Amazon as well, come into play. If you ever go eat sushi, they give you that little ginger. I eat the entire thing, and that's to stimulate motility, to get things moving, get that migrating motor complex moving, so food doesn't just sit and ferment. Get a squatty potty, best investment you'll ever make. And when you sit on the toilet, get your phone or get something that's going to distract you, because you need to just relax. Don't go sit on the toilet for 20 minutes. But if I'm in a hurry, and I know I'm in a hurry, I won't poop. But if I can just go in there and just like chill and like do work, I usually do my best work on my phone, on the toilet, then you will most likely have a bowel movement. You have to be in that rest and digest state in order for that poop to flow. Now in the morning, I would do some warm liquid movement in the morning to get things going. I always poop better if I have hot coffee versus an iced coffee. That's just me. Or even if you do like some warm lemon water or some tea, just something warm and a little bit of movement and relaxation. Wake up a little bit earlier, have a poop schedule, because if you're in a hurry, you will not go, and you're most likely not going to go in the evening. Okay, hang on. I need a break. We're almost there, guys, I promise. Okay. Stomach acid digestive support. Stomach acid support is very, very important. This is kind of the gist of everything that we've been talking about. Now, it's very important to know if we have H. pylori, because H. pylori is going to neutralize the stomach acid in our gut, but also if we put betaine HCl on top of an H. pylori overgrowth, it's like pouring fuel on a fire. It's going to piss your stomach off, and that H. pylori can also go in and hide in the stomach lining, and then it can just sit there and continue to grow, and you're going to have issues later on. So we definitely don't want to add fuel to the fire. But if we know you don't have H. pylori, we know stomach acid is low, we can try betaine HCl, which is essentially the same pH as your stomach acid. So if you take betaine and you don't have any burning, that means that you're sufficient and you 100% need it. I was able to get up to 4 caps at one point, which told me like I had no stomach acid. The fact that I could take 4 caps of betaine is crazy. If you take 1 cap, I had a client today, she took 2 and she felt some burning with that. So we know like, okay, 1 is enough to make you sufficient, and you should be good to go. Now, digestive enzymes are different than stomach acid. Those are those pancreatic enzymes we kind of talked about. I would recommend incorporating these to help you break down your food. I know we always hear take digestive enzymes, yada, 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 but why are you taking them? Like, why is your body not producing enough digestive enzymes on its own? That's not going to fix whatever's going on. So yes, we can take them to help with digestion, or if you're in a bulking phase and you're eating a lot of food, we can add some digestive support. Or if you're in a deficit, you're dieting, you're in prep, we can add some digestive support. But we need to figure out why your body's not producing enough on its own. So helping with or supporting stomach acid and then supporting digestive enzymes are going to be 2 big key players. You can do apple cider vinegar, dilute it in a little bit of water. That's going to help stimulate that stomach acid, it's not going to actually replace it the way butane HCl will, but if you just need like a little bit of support, try the apple cider vinegar with a little bit of water before meals. That'll help. You can also do digestive bitters, and even drinking like a little bit of lemon water, that bitterness will stimulate stomach acid and help with digestion as well. Oh, yes, I am going to send this through email. So if y'all need to go back and fast forward, you can. Eating hygiene, I ramp about this too much. Breath work before meals, so critical. Like I'll literally lay in my chair right here and do a whole breath work session before I eat, or I'll just sit here and like take 5 deep breaths. I've had like the heaviest work day today. I still have so many messages to get back to after this, and I can just feel myself like ramped up and anxious, and I've had to make sure before meals, like I just take away distractions and relax. Try not to eat in the car. I used to be a big car eater. I try not to do that anymore. And chew your food until it's smoothie consistency. We don't want our body to have to do any more work than it already does. So make sure you chew your food. You're not scarfing it down, and no water with your meals. Water is going to dilute your digestive enzymes. So you're not going to break down your food as well. And you're going to feel bloated, and it's just going to sit in your stomach. So those two things, super important. Light movements after meals. I can't walk right after my meal, but I'll wait like 15 minutes and then go on a walk just to get things moving. And then a big thing with veggies for y'all. I know y'all most girls love salads. Just be mindful of the roughage. If our veggies are not cooked, sometimes they're not as bioavailable, like the nutrients aren't as bioavailable. And then it's also just really hard on the digestive. And if your gut lining's already inflamed, we don't want to add a bunch of roughage. Also, be mindful of raw sushi, any raw food, and salad bars when you're on a kill off protocol, or if your stomach acid is low, because there's a lot of pathogens and parasites that can be on those things. Same thing with like pre-cut fruits and veggies at the store. We just don't want those pathogens getting in our body when we're in that susceptible state. So keep that in mind as well. And I would steam your veggies. A lot of people love to cook them to a crisp. I used to be a burnt veggie girly. Try to just steam them, get them nice and soft, and then eat them like that, and don't completely kill off all nutrients. And then also, like I said, don't try to eat them raw. Greens powders. So we just have to think about how processed greens powders are. Like at the end of the day, is there really any nutrition in that? I couldn't even tell you the processing that goes into greens powders. Now, I know some people say it does help with their digestion. I don't think it's going to hurt you. I just don't know if that's where I would put my money. I would much rather put my money into actual vegetables that I know I'm getting the micronutrients from versus a greens powder. I would rather buy organic veggies and organic produce than spend my money on a greens powder, because I think it's going to be a lot more beneficial, a lot more macronutrient dense. Also, when it comes to organic veggies, I'm okay with frozen, because in my mind, they're freezing them right after they pick them, so they might be a little bit fresher. Organic is just going to have less pesticides than regular. So if you can, at least with produce and especially meat, do not get non-GMO, pasture raised, cage-free eggs, meats, grass-fed beef, because we don't want any hormones in our food. I know of women who have gone through menopause and literally restarted their period because of all the hormones in our freaking meats nowadays. Okay, leaky gut. This goes back to that secretory IgA, that inflammation in the gut lining. Really, really important that we support the gut lining throughout this kill phase. Now, serum IgG, this is an antibody in the immune system. It's going to bind to toxins and help reduce inflammation. This is what I take every morning. You can also do colostrum, but this I would recommend once the kill phase is over and we can really go in and repair that gut lining even more. In the beginning, we really just want to support you because our body's about to undergo a big kill phase, a lot more inflammation. We want to kind of, like I said, get rid of those weeds before we fully go in and repair, but we definitely want to support that immune system and get that secretory IgA back up. Now, some other things that'll support the gut lining. If you're a client of mine, I have you on glutamine. I think everyone should be on glutamine. It's going to help maintain our gut lining and reduce inflammation. Now, If you are training hard, which I'm sure all of you on this call love to weightlift, that's probably why you're following me in the first place, you should be taking glutamine, because weightlifting and any strenuous training is going to impair the gut lining. It's going to cause inflammation, and glutamine can help counteract this and just give your body some extra support. Your body already creates it, but it's just giving you that additional amino acid support for that gut lining protection and repair. Aloe vera, I take this every morning. I just get the big jug at the store. This is really soothing for the gut lining. Same thing with bone broth. There's a lot of collagen. It's really good for gut lining repair. You can sip on this. It has great amino acids as well. Zinc carnosine is another one that's really good for gut lining repair. And then DGL, if you're having any burning in the stomach, you could try DGL. It'll actually coat your stomach lining and help with, like when I was taking a lot of herbals, I took this because I was having a lot of burning. Now I'm fine, but if you're in a place where you're just having a lot of heartburn, you might want to try DGL versus an acid suppressor. Oral BPC 157, this is a peptide, but if you take it orally, it can really help repair the gut lining. I will 100% be taking this after all of my kill off is said and done. I've seen a lot of great results from this. And then back to no coffee on an empty stomach. That's just an irritant to the stomach lining. And then reducing your stress bucket overall is really going to help support the leaky gut. Yeah, I love Mega IgG as well. I kid you not, I got sick 6 times last year. This year we only got sick once on our honeymoon, which we were in the mountains, so I kind of suspected that. Okay, going into kill off. So there's a million different ways to do this. Everyone you talk to is going to have a different route. I am overseeing every single kill off that goes on with my clients. I have seen what works, what doesn't work, and this is just from my own personal experience. Once the foundation is set and our body is ready to start killing off all of that overgrowth you saw in the GI map, the pathogens, the H. pylori, the SIBO, we're going to need to do a few things. One, biofilm disruptor. I mentioned this before, but our gut lining is like a sticky net. We have to kill off that biofilm so we can actually reach the pathogens that are hiding underneath. This is really important to do during or before a GI map so we can see everything. But then when we're in the kill off, we want to take a biofilm disruptor. So all those little pathogens hiding behind that sticky web, they can basically be exposed and we can go in and kill them too, because they might be hiding. We do a kill off and then we missed half of the bacteria because it was hiding in the little biofilm. Now you can go the herbal route or the antibiotic route. Like I said, herbals are going to be more expensive. They're going to take longer, which it's like, why would you ever do that if they're more expensive and they're going to take longer? I've seen way better results with them. They're a lot less harsh on the gut lining. They're not going to wipe out your beneficial flora as much. However, in some cases, some people have done the antibiotic route, antifungals, and they do really well with it. So we really just need to have that discussion and figure out what route works best for you, depending on your situation. Now anti parasitics, parasite cleanses, those can be done as well. Cellcore has a really good parasite cleanse that I did, and you want to base that around full moons. I know that sounds super woo-woo, but parasites kind of follow like the moon schedule. Binders. So what binders are going to do, are they going to bind to all those toxins, the toxins that I talked about recirculating through the body? Whenever we start to kill all of these things off, they're going to release toxins in the body. And that's why it's so important that our detox pathways are open first. So when that kill off does happen, those toxins are getting out. We can also use binders like charcoal to bind to things, bind to those toxins to help excrete them so they don't circulate through the body. This is what's called die-off symptoms or kill-off symptoms. When you first start your protocol and things are starting to die off, you can get flu-like symptoms. A very common one is fatigue. When I was first in my kill-off, I was sleeping literally 12 hours a night. It was insane. I was so tired. But think about how much stress your body is undergoing trying to just do a full clean out. That's why we have to pull back on our training and we have to get into like our healthy girl era. Healthy girl era is fun. I know it sounds lame because you can't train as hard, but like it truly is kind of a vibe. Like it gives us an excuse to relax. And then we realize how many things we can do when we don't go to the gym for 2 hours a day, 5 to 7 days a week, which you shouldn't be going 7 days a week. But just give yourself that time to just really nurture yourself and relax and just learn about who you are, like find your identity. I've talked about this before, but I'm a totally different person since getting out of the gym. And honestly, this is the best thing that ever happened to me because who knows where my ego would be and where I would be if I turned pro and just ran with that. This whole thing has humbled me. Um, Now, die off symptoms, like I said, keeping those pathways open and just again understanding what's happening in the body and trying not to freak out. It might get worse before it gets better, but this is all part of the process. If you get die off symptoms, that's sometimes a good sign because you know it's working. So after we've done all the kill off, we've supported you. Now we have to go in and replenish the good guys because the good guys, like you saw in my GI map, are most likely going to be wiped out. We cannot go plant the flowers until the weeds are gone. If we go add more flowers to a garden that is already overgrown, it's going to be too much. You're going to get gas, bloating. You're not going to feel good. So we've got to wipe everything out and then we can go back and rebuild. Now, we don't want to wipe out all our good guys during our kill off, so we can still incorporate some probiotics and some fibers, but you definitely need to talk with your practitioner about which ones to use. So again, you make sure you're not adding fluid to the fire. So probiotics, I know everyone loves a good probiotic. They're like, I just got this new probiotic at Walmart. It's going to make me a skinny queen. I don't think a lot of people know what probiotics are. So probiotics are the seeds for your gut microbiome. So essentially we're going in and we're planting a seed, but that seed doesn't just grow on its own. We have to water it, give it food, and allow it to flourish. So if we go and take probiotics, but we're not taking prebiotics, which are food for our bacteria, it's going to go in one end and out the other. It's not going to stick. So, I just said this can backfire if you have overgrowths. Like if I, in my gut, my small intestine, I had too much bacteria. If I took a probiotic, my body, I got so bloated, it was insane. Or if I took a prebiotic and I fed that bacteria, it just was like a fire in my stomach. So I had to wait until things were killed off. Now, some probiotics you can take are spore-based probiotics. This means that the probiotic is designed to where it's going to make it all the way to your large intestine and it's going to pass your small intestine. So right now I take Megaspore. This is a really good one. I would recommend it to almost anyone that's in a kill off protocol because it is a spore based, but it's actually going to make it into your large intestine just to give my body some good bacteria while I'm going through this phase. And then later on, I can hit it a little harder and start to create, like I said, that flourishing of the probiotics and add more in there. Um, but we just need to be very mindful of what we're taking and why we're taking it and the quality of the probiotics because most of them just get killed off in your stomach acid. It's not even making it into your large intestine where bacteria belongs. So it's kind of like pointless. Like we have to figure out why we're doing it. And as you can see from this whole PowerPoint, you really have to deep dive into things. Now, post antibiotics, because antibiotics, like we take amoxicillin, when we have strep throat, or the doctor always is throwing antibiotics at us. This is just going to wipe out your good bacteria. It's just going to take it out like truck. So if you've had long-term antibiotic use, I guarantee you have no beneficial flora. Saccharomyces boulardii is a yeast-based probiotic, but it's going to help reduce inflammation and just support the barrier and kind of combat infections and combat that kill off while you're taking the antibiotics. This is another one I could recommend for a lot of people. It'll also help with traveler's diarrhea, very random, but that could be something that you could implement that would be beneficial for you. You can find that on Amazon. Designs by Health has a really good brand. Anytime you have food poisoning, highly recommend Saccharomyces boulardii and charcoal, activated charcoal, because it'll bind to those toxins. And at the end of the day, test, don't guess. Don't just start throwing probiotics at yourself because it might make you feel worse. Now, prebiotics, sorry, this thing's in my way. Prebiotics and fiber, that's the same thing. So fiber is prebiotics. This is food for those seeds. So we give our body the probiotic, we implant the seed, and then we feed all the beneficial bacteria. That's why fiber is so important. Most of y'all who start working with me, your fiber is at like 11 grams a day. And we got to get it up. It should be 30, 40. If you can handle more, that's awesome. When you're first starting a kill off, you might have to go low fiber. Like because I had overgrowth, I had to start really low and now I'm back up and my body can tolerate it. But fiber is going to bind to those toxins that we discussed, and it's also going to help with estrogen dominance because it binds to those toxins. So if you're estrogen dominant, this is very important for you. It's going to bind to that excess estrogen, help excrete all of that out of the body, and it's going to speed up your transit time. Now, we do have different types of fiber. So insoluble fiber is going to add bulk to our stool, like vegetables, potato skins. That's why I always say, like, keep the skin on your potato. Resistant starch. So if you have, and some of y'all, I put this in your plan, if you have potato and rice and you allow it to cool, so sometimes I'll make my breakfast and then I'll put my potatoes on top of my food cold, that turns it into resistant starch. And it basically means that starch resists the small intestine. It does not break down in the small intestine. It makes it all the way into the large intestine, and then it feeds that good bacteria. So resistant starch is awesome. Green bananas, lentils, beans, legumes. That's why some of those things can also make you gassy if you have an overgrowth or your body, those gut microbiome or flora just don't tolerate that food well. It might create some gas. But it's good to incorporate that as well to feed that microbiome. And then also soluble fiber. That's going to form more of a gel consistency, slowing transit time, which I know you're like, why would you want to slow transit time? But it does absorb water and create more of a gel. So it is going to help things go through and prevent diarrhea. We need a good combination of both. You don't want to just do one or the other. And it's a lot easier on the gut. We talked about kind of roughage. If you have an inflamed gut, soluble fiber is going to be a lot easier on the gut. So we want to make sure we have a good variety of both. Is Megaspore a good long-term probiotic, or is it good to switch it up? So we don't really need to be on any probiotic long-term. Ideally, we're going to build up our gut microbiome and we're gonna feed it with fiber. You can also do probiotic foods. So like I did kimchi for a while, kefir, yogurts, coconut cult is a really good non-dairy probiotic yogurt. So it is good to incorporate probiotics, but you don't need to be on a supplement because you're essentially putting the same strain in you over and over and over. And at some point, hopefully it's going to actually stick and build because you're feeding it. And then you just continue feeding it. You really don't need to continue planting seeds as long as the water or the flowers are staying alive. I hope that makes sense. So really aim for 30 to 40 in total. That's with everything. Now, we're almost at the end, guys. Okay, these are two really good resources. This book right here, Lacey Dunn wrote, the RD I partner with. This is the literal Bible for the female body. I cannot recommend this book enough. If you truly want to understand your body, she breaks down everything for us from digestion, hormones, PCOS, infertility, cortisol, thyroid, like it is my holy grail. I love it so much. And I wish every single woman on planet Earth would read it because I think we would all just be so empowered and be able to honestly heal ourselves some of the time. Um, but that is a really good book, and I can always help navigate you through that. And then Beyond the Pill, this one specific, Dr. Jolene Brighton has a podcast. They both do. Highly recommend you listen to both of them. She has this book about birth control pills. So if you want more information on that specifically, and just walking through all the symptoms, I think this is a really good book to inform you